Continuing my journey through the Bone series, I now come to Bone 6, Old Man's Cave. Now, before I get into this, there's something that I forgot to mention in my review of Bone 5, Rockjaw, which is, I've mentioned a few times before that when I lived in Vietnam, I used the Bone comics to teach English to my students as just a kind of comprehensible input. Every day we would read through a few panels of the comic book, which I transferred onto a PowerPoint, and we read it as a class together. Now, when I was doing that, I never got all the way through the series with my students, just because it's such a long series. So the point which I got to with my students was halfway through Bone 5, this Rockjaw volume. Somewhere halfway through this was the farthest I made it when I was teaching this book to my students. Now, I have read the whole epic once, a couple years ago, when I read Bone, the Complete Epic All-in-One Volume collection. And I reviewed it on this channel. I'll link to it down below. But past this point, I don't remember the issues all that well. Everything up to this point I remember quite well because I used it multiple times in my classroom. So I read it with my students not once but many times, and I remember it more or less backwards and forwards, all the panels, all the jokes, all the plot points, etc. From here on out, I remember some of this vaguely from when I read the whole epic all at once a few years ago. But I will be maybe getting to points where my memory is not so sharp, talking about things that I had forgotten, things that surprised me, etc. So feel free to let me know in the comments what your impression of this comic is. But let's get into this here, starting with the prologue, The Cranky Groundhog. So this is some classic cartoony shenanigans here, where Phone Bone is up in the tree, Smiley Bone is down below, and they meet a groundhog who's just cranky about it and giving them a rough time, and then ends up with Bone falling down and bumping the groundhog's head. And then the groundhog realizes that they are Phone Bone, the ones who killed King Doc. They didn't actually kill King Doc, but they've got the reputation for killing King Doc, which means they've got a big target on them, which Phone Bone is not happy about. And then we go to chapter 1 in this collection, The Hollow Tree. These were all originally comic book issues. So each one of these was originally a comic book that was on the newsstand back in the day. Looks like, according to the copyright page, these comics came out in 1988 and 1999. Anyways, the village has been destroyed. So they make their way back to Barrelhaven, and there's nothing left. So it can't be. There's nothing left. They couldn't have destroyed our whole town. Where's the Barrelhaven Tavern? You're standing on it. Sorry, we're standing on it. So this represents a big change in the tone of the story. Up until now, we've seen that these village people are happily living their lives while the shadow of evil is vaguely looming over them. But now we are into the post-apocalyptic world and the ultimate showdown between good and evil. But that doesn't mean we still can't have some fun cartoony sequences here, even as the tone of the series shifts to being more serious. We get some dream sequences with Thorn, and she sees what she thinks is Grandma Ben, but is actually her grandma's sister Briar and the young Lucius. The designs for these characters are very much in keeping with the Rose prequel, which had a different art aesthetic to it. So much so that I was thinking, did these issues come out after the Rose prequel? So I went back in Wikipedia and double-checked this, and it looks like the Rose prequel came out in comic book form between 2000 and 2002. The Bone series ran until 2004. And like I said before, these specific issues were 1988 and 1999. So the Rose prequel is not out yet, but quite possibly Jeff Smith was already thinking of it. And you can see in a lot of these character designs that the influence of the Rose prequel, or maybe this had the influence on the Rose prequel, whichever one came first in Jeff Smith's mind. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know at what point Jeff Smith got the idea to start working on the Rose prequel, but it might have been concurrent with these issues. So, Thorn shows up and saves Foam Bone and Smiley Bone. They are hiding out for a while where they plan their next move. And then we have the Hooded One, whose identity has not yet been revealed at this point, coming to talk to Rockjaw, as well as King Duck. And King Duck cannot talk properly, and he just growls. And the reason he's growling is revealed when Lockjaw says, "What was that? I couldn't quite make out what you were saying. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" So, yeah, I guess this is where the comic book loses its innocent, cartoony side and switches back again to a little bit dark fantasy, where King Duck's tongue has been torn out here. So that's a choice. I guess obviously Jeff Smith is emphasizing that he is moving away from the innocent cartoon tone here. Now, I went back the previous issue to look at the fight between King Duck and Lockjaw to see if it was obvious when the tongue was getting ripped out. So here it is. Here we see Lockjaw attack King Duck. You can see that this panel is a little bit confused as to what's going on. That's probably deliberate. But then in the next panel, looks like Lockjaw is attacking King Duck's front, but King Duck's tongue is not yet being grabbed. But and that's. Oh, I was going to say that's the last we see of them, but here we see Lockjaw running away. But yeah, King Duck's tongue getting ripped off must have happened off screen. But here we go. So King Duck can no longer form words. He can just growl. Now, Rockjaw agrees to help the bad guys here, which I didn't remember this had happened. I in my mind I had remembered Rockjaw as just being like an independent third entity, neither good nor bad, which I guess he kind of is, but I've forgotten that he sides with the bad guys here. So he is off now to catch Bone and the princess, kill the princess and bring back Bone. The Hooded One, by the way, has been ordered to keep the princess alive, but wants to kill the princess out of jealousy. She doesn't want anyone replacing her in the eyes of the Lord of the Locusts. Then we get a dialogue between Phonebone and Grandma Ben. Sorry, Phonybone and Grandma Ben. In which there was an interesting little piece of dialogue here, which again I had completely forgotten about. Phonybone alludes to how Lucius and Grandma Ben can get married. And she said, "Married? Why would Lucius and I get married?" "Because you guys are old sweethearts. He told me you two were almost married once." "That's ridiculous. Lucius and I never even courted. Why, he wasn't even sweet on me. At least not until it was too late." So it's revealed later when Lucius sees Briar that it looks like Briar is the one he had a history with. Which again lines up with some of the panels in the Rose prequel book when we see that Briar had put Lucius under her spell. But yeah, I'd completely forgotten this. I was thinking all along that Lucius was talking about his relationship with Grandma Ben, but it was Briar, not Grandma Ben, he had the courting relationship with, which is an interesting plot twist here. Now back to the abandoned farmhouse where Phonebone and Phonybone are, and Thorn gets this idea that she's going to go and assassinate the hooded one until she changes her mind and says, "All right, fine, we'll go back to Old Man's Cave." In the previous couple books and in this book, a fair amount of the plot is just dictated by Thorn changing her mind. She wants to go out on her own, she comes back. She wants to go out on her own, she comes back. It's maybe getting close to being a little bit tiresome, but doesn't quite get there. I think it's still all right. It's still not terrible. All right. Then Lucius is out with his men, and he gets distracted by Briar, who is dead. Rose saw you. Your body was cut in two. And yet, here you are, as beautiful as you ever wore in life. Now, the other images we see of Briar, she doesn't look this young and beautiful. So, I'm not sure what's going on, if she's projecting an illusion, or if when her magic is up to full strength, she's able to physically alter her form. But either way, this is how Lucius sees her. And while he's distracted by her, the rats come out. And he says, "What have I done?" Now, I went back and looked at this a couple of times to see how Lucius was at fault here. So Lucius sets up other people to watch the river. But he never actually tells his men that he's going to watch the river himself. So it's a little bit unclear to me if he was actually neglecting his guard duty here. At any rate, in Lucius's defense, I think once he sees this dead woman come back to life, he has to investigate it. So I'm not sure if this is him being distracted so much as him investigating something that anybody else would have been curious about. But at any rate, he blames himself for the rats getting past while he wasn't looking. I'm not quite sure how it would have been different if he would have been watching. Sounds like the rats just kind of overran them anyways. But then, sorry, I'm looking for the next point of interest. Rockjaw, who is supposed to capture the bones and kill Thorn, arrives. There's a fight here, but he ends up achieving his objective. He's got Thorn here, and Phonybone here. And Lockjaw seems to think that Thorn is dead, even though I'm not sure this is a killing stroke. But stand aside, Bone. I need the body. So the reader is led to believe that Thorn is dead, and all the other characters think that Thorn is dead. Oh, sorry, and here we get to something I forgot to talk about, but this is key, I guess. The dragon is not allowed to come because the Council of Dragons has forbidden it. And this was alluded to earlier when Grandma Ben was talking to Lucius. If ever we needed the Great Red Dragon, we need him now. I know, but the Council's decision was final. I pleaded with the High Council in Darengard for 3 days. So this, again, is something that must have taken place off-screen. We never actually saw this. It's also a little bit unclear when it took place. I'm guessing it took place recently. Like, this was... Yeah. After the events of the war had already begun, as opposed to 5 years before the story happened. So the up until now, the dragon has functioned as kind of the Deus Ex Machina of the Bone series. Whenever Bone gets in trouble and gets surrounded, the dragon comes out of nowhere to save him. And that's worked so far, but you can't really develop narrative tension if you always just expect the dragon to come out of nowhere and save everybody. So I guess that's why the High Council of Dragons has forbidden him to take part in it. It still strikes me, I don't know if this is going to get explained better in the next few issues, strikes me as a little bit arbitrary. Like, why did the High Council of Dragons forbid it? And it's a little bit strange that the dragon is going along with that decision, even though he seems to recognize how badly he's needed. Yeah, even though it's a little bit convenient or contrived, this is the explanation we're going for to explain why the dragon just can't come out of nowhere and save everybody like he has previous. So, Phonybone is taken over here to be sacrificed. And here we get to one of the great payoffs in this whole Bone series. From very early on, I think maybe even from the first book, definitely from the second book, we've known that the bad guys are looking for Phonybone. For some reason, we don't know why, but they want him. And that doesn't make any sense because Phonybone has just entered the valley, so why in the world would they want him? But then we find out why. This giant inflatable balloon that says Phonicible P. Bone will get you. So this is the campaign balloon from when Phonybone was running for mayor that drifted off and must have crossed the desert into this land. And as Phonybone explains, it's supposed to say, Phonicible P. Bone will get your vote. So very convenient that it got cut off just right here. I mean, right in the middle of the word, where there's supposed to be an R there to finish the word. But, that's the genre we're dealing with here. So this kind of cartoon-like genre where you have these cartoon-type coincidences. So I'm willing to let this go. And this was foreshadowed brilliantly in the earlier issues. So Smiley-Bone and Phonebone had already recounted the story to Grandma Ben in earlier volumes about how Phonybone had run for mayor. There was a giant inflatable balloon of him that got lost and scared all the townspeople. That's why they got run out of town. That and the bad prunes. And so to have this payoff where this inflatable balloon of him that we had heard about earlier but didn't think it had any plot significance, to see this all of a sudden come back, and then we would find out, that's why the bad guys are looking for the bone with the star on his shirt. Just such brilliant, subtle foreshadowing, and then eventual payoff. And then, just when Phony Bone is about to get killed for the sacrifice, we have Grandma Ben come out of nowhere for a great hero moment. That bone creature is not a Vinyankari. That's the word for someone of great power. Let him go. And he says, even I can see this balloon is no omen of power. It is merely a symbol of pride and vanity. Yes, she finally realizes her mistake. And she's made a mistake here because she's convinced the Lord of the Locusts that Phony Bone is the one they want, not Thorn. She wants to kill Thorn because she's jealous of Thorn's power and doesn't want Thorn to replace her with the Lord of the Locusts. Now, here we get to what I view as one of the maybe weaker moments, is that when Phony Bone goes down, we find out that Thorn is still alive. So, I mean, obviously it's good Thorn is still alive. She's a major player here. But in this story, and we wouldn't want her to be killed off because it's not that kind of a story. This is, despite its darker moments, still a children's story. But it just strikes me as silly that Rockjaw and Briar both wanted Thorn dead, and that they didn't check to see if Thorn is dead. Thorn was just temporarily dazed and unconscious, and then comes back to consciousness very easily once Phony Bone just helps her up to her feet. So she was in some sort of deep sleep that was deep enough to keep her unconscious this whole time, but not quite deep enough that with a little bit of prodding to her feet, or I don't know if the dragon necklace had anything to do with it, maybe. It's not clear. But she comes out of it very easily. So yeah, that part of it is a little bit silly. You would think that Briar would have checked to make sure she was dead. But because Briar has made this mistake, the locusts abandon her. And then we are just left with her dead body having been cut in two. And then that's where this book ends. Now, if memory serves, Briar is going to come back to be the antagonist in the other books. We still have books 7, 8, and 9 to go. But I don't remember how that happens. I guess the Lord of the Locusts must just change his mind at some point. I'll see how that's dealt with in the future books. So yeah, that is my review of Book 6, Old Man's Cave, and I'm off to Book 7, The Ghost Circles, next. So stay tuned for that review.